All right, I think we're taping here. I want to talk a little bit about transformations of functions and in general, all right, and there's many transformations. These are just 4 of them. But if you have a function, functions, you sub an input and it spits out or it produces an output, okay? So X is your input. You put input into the function does its job, right? And it kind of spits out an output, all right? So functions have inputs and outputs. So if your transformation is on the outside of the function, it is impacting output, okay, which is your Y values. It's impacting the output. So here, your output is your Y values, so they are going to get pushed up 3. So the whole function is going to go up 3. Transformation is going to slide up 3, okay? Here, this is output, and it's minus 3. So it is going to bring it down 3. The whole graph is just going to slide down, okay? But notice here it's different. Here, it's impacting the input, okay? And it's, how can I say, it's kind of backwards of what you would think. It's whatever causes 0, all right? So whatever causes 0 in here is really what your transformation is. Because if you think about it, if I want this to be a function of 0, okay, like starting out at 0, X would have to be a positive 3 to just be at the input of 0, okay? If you think of factoring, going back to say I factor on a quadratic equals 0, this function, this factor here, it's not really as it appears, because when I said it equals 0, it's really a positive 3. The answer is really positive 3 because a positive 3 is what causes 0, and that is your shift, okay? And then here, whatever causes 0, that is my shift. So with input, it's kind of like you're undoing it. You're doing it backwards, all right, because we're dealing with input here. So whatever causes 0. So this is going to shift it 3 to the right, positive 3. This is going to shift it 3 to the left, negative 3. Okay, and we can have all sorts of other things going on too, but those are kind of the simple situations here. All right, so any function, it doesn't matter what it is. I'm just going to use a square root function. These transformations kind of have the same behavior on any parent function. All right, so it's kind of good to know what's happening here. All right, so say I take this function and we do that to it. Okay, I could take the parent function and I could do that. Okay, so we could see what happens there. I could take my parent function and I could do something on the outside. Okay, so these are kind of similar to over here, not necessarily in the same order, but we're taking our parent function, we're doing something to the inside. Notice these are both impacting input, but notice these are output, because the function is going to spit out an output, right? It's going to produce an output, and then we're going to do this. All right, so I'm going to graph these on DESMOS. I'm going to pause for a second and pull DESMOS down, and we're going to graph these, and then we'll do a few other things to this function just to see how it's going to behave. All right, we'll see how this goes. I'm in DESMOS graphing here. So I'm going to come up here, okay, and I'm going to type f of x equals maybe, and then what do I have? Square root. I'm just going to do sqrt. It's faster, and then do x. And again, remember, this is one that reminded me of a turtle or a rock or slow hill. It's kind of a slow growing type situation here. All right, so now let's go. We'll do our g of x function. And again, square root sqrt, but there is a template down here with functions and stuff like that. So x minus 4. All right, and notice what it did. Normally 0's at 0, right? But here I have to sub in a positive 4 to get it to behave at 0. So a positive 4 is your shift. So the orange, you can see it. And if I click here, I can hide it. And there it is. So I can see the shift there. All right, let's do the next one, which is it? H of x. H of x is square root of what? X plus 4 on this one. All right, so now again, I'm going to go ahead and hide this one. All right, and so you can see that for this pink one to be here, x would have to be at a -4 to get it to behave exactly like the original. So when you set this equal to 0, right, you get a -4, and that is your shift. It is going left, right? So here's your original, and there's my shift. Okay, all right, I'm going to hide. Actually, I think I'll just delete both of those. So those are shifting left or right, which makes sense. X-axis is your input. And so that is shifting left or right, but it's whatever causes 0, because for it to mimic how it behaves at 0, for this one to mimic it, you would need a +4 to get this to be at 0. Here you would need a -4 for it to get at 0. So that's your shift, okay? All right, I'm going to just delete both of those. All right, so what's our next one? I of x equals, okay, this one is the square root of x. Now I need to click outside of here because now we're dealing with stuff on the outside, +3. All right, notice it shifted exactly what it says, okay? It's not like input where you have to kind of think of undoing it. Once you get your output, then you add the 3. It's order of operations. It's after the fact. So it is what it is. So for example, if x is 1 for input, the square root of 1 is 1. You get your output. Then you adjust the output by adding 3. And so that's why it is what it says it is. All right, there's your original, up 3. And I'm just going to edit this and do, what's the next one, -7. So I'm just going to edit it, -7. And you can see it is going to go down 7. All right, so it is what it says it is. All right, so what else can I do with this? All right, so let's think about what is going to happen if I put a negative in front. Is it going to impact input or is it going to impact output? Well, I would square root my x first, order of op, then I would make it negative. Okay, so my output is becoming negative. So what do you think that's going to do on the graph? So is it going to reflect this way, right? Well, that's reflecting, so x's that used to be positive are going to come over here and now be negative. So the input is changing here. Okay, what if I take these y values and reflect them down? Well, my y values used to be positive, and now my y values are going to be down here negative. That seems to make more sense because it's the output. But let's see if we're right. There we are. Okay, all right, so we are correct. All right, what if I put the negative on the inside? All right, well, now it's impacting input. Okay, so if I have x is 4, I would put 4 in there, but then I'd make it negative, which would be the square root of -4 is 2i, right? Like we're dealing with, you know, imaginary numbers, so that wouldn't be defined. All right, but some things might be defined, right? All right, so if I sub in, for example, -4, the opposite of a -4. So if I have something like the opposite, if I sub in negative values, now I get double negative. So I get square root of +4. That's 2. So that is going to exist, right? That is going to be okay. All right. So I am thinking my input is going to become opposite. So my x's that were positive are going to reflect over here. So let's see if my reasoning is correct. And it is. All right. All right, let's happen. What if I have, say, 5 minus x? What's going on there? Okay, now, that's my green one. Does that make sense to me? So let's think about this. We have the square root of 5 minus x. Okay. Now, you might be like, well, if I set that equal to 0, I would need a +5. Okay. So did it shift over +5? Did it go to the right a +5? Yes, it did, right? It went over a +5 right there. So whatever causes 0, +5, it shifted 5 to the right. And then this negative said, ooh, the input is going to reflect at that point. Okay, now if this bugs you, you can factor out the negative. So then this becomes a +x and a negative. Then you can kind of see, oh yeah, +5, yep, that's my shift there. And oh, yep, it is reflecting, okay? But, you know, you can kind of think of it logically as well. All right. So let's see, what else do we have going on here? What else can I do? I could maybe do a couple things. All right, let's try doing a couple things to this one. All right, so say I put a, let's put a number out front. What's that going to do? Say 3. I'm going to ditch this stuff. All right, that made it kind of stretch towards the y-axis, right? Okay. What if I do, say, a third? Let's see. Okay, do my fraction first, yeah. It's sometimes easier to put the fraction key first. Okay, that made it go away from the y-axis. All right. Okay, let's pause, and we're going to do this with a parabola. Okay, so a quadratic function, so we can kind of see similar stuff.